Alright, you guys, we got another tier list. I waited till close to the middle of the month because I was waiting for the new pack to release, see what impact it had, and the ban list, and the answer is not that much. The new pack is not really going to be super impactful. I don't really think the Novelles or I can't remember what the other new archetype was that was added, but I played against both of them and they're not really meta shaking, but let's get into it. So, Black Wings, you could play Black Wings at this point. I do feel like it's playable. I don't really feel like you're going to ladder very high with them. I did see some of them in the lower ranks of Diamond as I was making my way through lower Diamond. Um, so they must have at least gotten that far, but I just don't really feel like this deck is too much of a contender right now. I'm actually putting Scareclaw up. I'm putting Scareclaw up in off picks because I'm seeing this deck more and more. Seeing it every level of representation, from like lower platinum up to high diamond. So this deck, I even saw a couple of the masters like last season. So this deck, I feel like continues to get a little bit better with the support it had. I don't really feel like it's good enough to compete with the top contenders, so I do feel like it's more of an off pick or a rogue pick, but it is definitely playable. Dragon Link is going to go in our best decks category, and the reason is because Dragon Link is still amazingly good. It can be hard to play through their board. The deck just has a lot going for it, and it hasn't really lost anything on the ban list lately, and you see the representation for it quite a bit. So I definitely feel like it belongs in the best decks category. However, I do not feel it's as good as Pearly. And if you play against Pearly, you know the deal with Pearly by now. They can OTK you with one of the big cats, or they can sit on the other one that's basically uh, a Cleefort Towers and just unaffected by everything, can spin stuff back, gain advantage during your opponent's turn, just all kinds of crazy things. And Pearly with hand traps to back it up is just too good right now. I feel like if they wanted to hit the deck and still make it be fair, they could put Delicious Memory to 1, and I feel like that would hurt the deck a little bit more. Rika, I feel like Rika's playable. I know I'm normally too hard on Rika and I put it in the D tier, but I have been seeing this more in terms of representation. I do feel like it's playable. I feel like it's kind of tied with Black Wings. Not the best deck, and I really think that everything above it pretty much clowers it. We're gonna put Exo Sisters and off picks, probably towards the tail end of off picks, and keep it there for now. I feel like this deck is still very disruptive and can still definitely do things in the meta. I occasionally see it; it's not bad. Uh, let's put Monaco in good decks, and the reason we're putting it in good decks is this is definitely better than something that came before, like Numeron, for those like OTK FTK decks. And the reason behind that is, let's say you're playing Pearly, for example, and you get your Noir on the field. Uh, Minako or Mankanko always runs Kaiju. Some of them also run Lava Golems, so they really don't care. They're just going to tribute your big boss monster and run into the Kaiju. And a lot of times, decks don't always have things to stop that or play around that. Some decks do have the tools to easily beat Minkako, but others do not. And I feel like if this deck is able to get past your hand traps or get past the pitfalls that you might have for it, it can really do work and just end you in one turn. And it has a lot of options. I know people are going to be like, what are you talking about? When in terms of options, I mean, like, it has the equip card that can negate effects, increase attack, make both players take the battle damage, all kinds of things. So it's decent. I just don't really feel like it's good enough to be in the best decks category because you can play around it. Next we have Blue Eyes. Blue Eyes is in D. Outside of gold, I don't see this deck being playable. I don't see this deck getting any representation. It's just not equipped to deal with any of the things above it, really. I'm actually going to put Emancipator at the head of D tier. I'm not even going to put it in playable. The representation for this deck has completely fallen off. I haven't seen it at all in hundreds of matches in platinum and above. And I feel like the deck with the current ban list and no block dragon is just pure copium. So where it is. I'm actually going to put Mathmac up in good decks above Minkonko. And this also kind of goes for like the new Cyberse deck with like Dark Fluid. I feel like Cyberse got more options for the most recent pack, and I've actually been seeing a resurgence of this deck being played since the pack dropped. So it's definitely good. Um, I wouldn't sleep on it. Sprite is hurt, but it's still there, and the engine is still advantage. I think I'm gonna. I don't want to really want to put it in off picks, but I do think it can be at the end of good decks. Um, I'm actually gonna put Sword Soul ahead of it. That's just my opinion. I just feel like Sword Soul is a little bit better equipped to deal with the meta, and I also have had an easier time winning against the meta game with Sword Soul than I have with Sprite. But that's just me. I could be wrong. Let me know down below. Next, we have Runic variants. I'm actually going to put Runic in off picks as the king of off pick. This deck is okay. And that's pretty much all I have to say, but it's okay. It still does its thing. The Naturia variant's still decent. I still see representation for all sorts of Runic variants occasionally on the ladder. Um, it's not bad. I just feel like the things above it are better. It can definitely beat the things above it. I just feel like it's not the best deck at this point in time. Next, we have Sky Striker. I'm gonna put them in D. I don't even really consider them too playable. Like I've never had problems against Sky Striker this season or like last season. If I'm running anything above it, I pretty much just steamroll it. The deck is just not powerful enough. I do feel like Thrust gives it a little bit more. I do feel like with the right pilot, this deck can beat some of the decks above it. But like, what are you gonna do if you're not running uh Kaijus and you go up against Pearly and Pearly sets up Noir first turn? Like, how are you gonna deal with it? It's unaffected and you can't do anything to it. You're just out of luck. Next we have Labyrinth. I'm put Labyrinth in good decks. I'm gonna put Labyrinth above Monaco but below Cybers. I know it's like a controversial opinion, but I rarely lose to lab decks. I'm in a lot of trouble against lab decks. I feel like if you've played against enough of them and you know how to play around them and you have the resources in your deck to play around them, then you're not going to have a huge problem against them. It's hard if they go first and they just set everything up. Then you might be in a little bit of trouble. But every time I played against Labyrinth, especially with Pearly, I've just completely dunked on them. So I feel like this deck is decent, but against some of the decks above it, it just has a hard time. Uh, Blue, I'm actually going to put Flu at the ass end of playable. It's just on the precipice of being D tier. D standing for Doo-Doo or Dookie. Um, it's there. It still does things. It's really struggling with the ban list. It losing Lotus or a Pointer or whatever it was called also hurt the deck a little bit, even though it was more of a generic hit. I'm gonna put Branded up here in good decks, and I'm actually gonna put him ahead of Mathmac and Cyberse. I feel like the deck is still good. I feel like one Branded Fusion is hard, but with things like Triple Tactics Thrust and other fusion cards, the deck is okay. The buy steel package is still good in here. It's not dead. Next we have Tri-Brigade variants. I feel like this just isn't it for me, Chief. I'm just gonna go ahead and put that in D. Um, next we have Cash. Cash is okay. It's mainly like a Floodgate-esque deck. Some people are gonna get mad at me, but I'm actually gonna put it behind Kanko. I'm gonna put it just in the good decks category. Numeron at this point, why would you be playing Numeron if you could play Minkanko? I feel like Numeron's way easier to out than Minkanko, and it's way easier to stop. It is playable and it can still do its thing, but I feel like it's on just the ass end of playable. Punk variants, Punk X, whatever, is just a decent off pick all around. It's a good engine. Ignister, especially with the new Cyber links you have, I feel like Ignister is actually a good off pick. I feel like it can actually easily beat a lot of things above it if it sets up properly. If it sets up against Pearly, it just depends on like who's untargetable, unaffected monsters like bigger. Next we have Dinos. I played against a lot of Dinos recently, and I mainly played against them with Runic variants and Cash variants and Pearly variants, and I just haven't had any trouble with Dinos. I feel like this might be a tough meta game for Dinos. I'm actually going to put Dinos as the king of D tier. And that is your tier list for the month of November. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.